Picking up with where we left off, let's continue with this special edition of This Is My Story with Pastor Tola. And as you heard this, what was going through your mind? Were you confident? Did you have a lot of faith at that time, or you're still unsure?
I was okay. I was okay. I didn't have any trepidation at all because I knew who was speaking. Honestly, I tell people today, honestly, the best gift you can give yourself is to hear God speak to you as a believer. When God speaks, I don't care the market noise. I don't care who is talking. I don't care who is making noise. When God has spoken, I know who has spoken, unless I didn't hear him well. Anyway, so I knew it was God. So I knew we had to make, this thing very fast. So eventually, we left Nigeria. But I was still doing my business, trying to be circling because I had not heard anything from God about whether I should stop doing the bit or this is what I should do. Ministry had not even come in. So when we got here, I remember then I went to the general overseer of RCCG and I said to him, God has spoken to me to travel to America. And he said to me, when you get there, can you help with our church? At that time, Jesus House DC was just established. I had been there when they inaugurated the church. I was there. Do you understand? So now I was coming back. I was there in 1995. Now I was coming back in 1996. And the church was like a year old, and so we joined the church and everything. And in the course of joining the church, I had some goods back in UK that I needed to pay for, and these goods we had taken a loan from a gentleman, to run part of our business. And this gentleman is passed now, very good man. So he loaned out the money and we paid him interest on the money and all that. And he loaned on the money in pounds, in sterling. At that time, a container, we spent about 30,000 pounds to fill a container. Do you understand? So we're going back and forth. I was the one in charge of the operations. I'd have to travel to source all the engines of cars and things that we were selling, to load it, get it out. And anyway, so I called my brother and I said to him, oh, there's so much naira somewhere, go to the bank, collect the money. He went to the bank, collected it. I said, go and change it to pounds. When you change it, take it from Ibadan. Ibadan, where's right where we had our shop, So I said, take it to Ibadan, but we had the office in Lagos. Okay. I said, take it to Lagos and take it to the man that I talked about, who loaned us the money. I knew the man was traveling that night to UK. So I was going to leave America and go meet up with him in UK. Then I'll collect the money, So he said, fine. I said, make sure you do what I said. He said, fine. So he was at the bureau to change. You are changing the money. So evening time, I called the man about 6 o'clock. I knew the flight was about 12 midnight, 11:30. I said, oh, sir, do you have our money now? He said, what money? I said, my brother was supposed to bring the money to you. He finished transaction about 10 a.m. Lagos to Ibadan. It's not whatever. I had a driver and a car, that was going to take him, that's my brother, to this man. He said, he has not seen anybody. So I called my brother. I said, what happened? The man said, where are you? He said he was in Ibadan. I said, doing what? I said, so what happened to the money? He said he gave the money to the driver. Oh. I wasn't this quiet when that happened. I cursed him out because I could not believe that somebody could behave like this. He's how many years older than me? He's 6 years older than me. And he behaved like I'm 20 years older than him. I said, you gave 30,000 pounds to a driver That was the end of that money.
Mm.
We never saw the driver again. The driver just parked the car somewhere.
Wow.
And he bolted away with the money. The following day, I bought a ticket. Ticket I was going to use to London. I changed it. Boom. I went to Nigeria. It was a one-way ticket that could take me back to Nigeria. So I got to Nigeria. I looked everywhere where I could, the guarantors of nothing. So I now went to camp. A camp is a prayer place for the former denomination that I was in. So I rented a room, and I started praying. I just said, I need to talk to God on this. This one I know God knows, and nothing takes God by surprise. So I wanted to know, why did this happen? What happened? On the third day, God spoke to me and said, you need to get yourself up and go back to America and go and do the work that I sent you to do there. And I said, what work? And God said, ministry. But there was nothing about ministry when I was living. You can't be arguing with God, though. Yeah. But this was my argument in my head that, God, if you had told me it's ministry, why would... Looking back, I can say that God allowed that to happen so that I could focus on the ministry. So this is where the challenge is. At that point, I had 150 pounds on me, and I had some naira. There was a one-way ticket to London, and I bought it then. I think it was 50,000 naira or something like that. So I bought it. That's coming back to America. So when I got to London, there was no ticket to go to America. I tried to get a ticket. The cheapest ticket was 350 pounds. One way from London to America. I had only 150 pounds on me. Mm-hmm. But there's this couple that I stay with. They are friends, very close friends, So I got to their house, and each time I'm in London, I sleep in their house. When I got to their house, I wanted to eat. I looked at the fridge. There was no food. I said, you guys don't have food? So I said to the wife, I said, let's go to the market. Let's go to the supermarket. He said, hey, Tola, there's no money. I said, don't worry, I have money. The 150 I had, So we went. I spent all the 150. We bought groceries. If I don't have ticket to America, at least we can eat while we're here. So at least we can eat now. So we filled up the whole freezer there everywhere. So my wife called me and said, so what happened? I told her, I said, well, I'm here that I don't have money to come to America yet. But I said, but when you were leaving, you had 150. I said, yeah. I said, we used 150 for food. He said, you did? I said, yeah. I said, look. We cannot die here. Let's just eat first, and then we'll be able to think straight. I'm telling you, So I believe the following night, a pastor that was in town, and he said to me, please, can you preach for me on Sunday, please? And I said, oh, why not? I'm not doing anything. I said, I didn't want to preach because I wasn't in the mood. And he said, but that. So I went to his church and I preached for him. But it wasn't there. That's another story. Anyway, I preached for him. That was it. Then we had an FOL, Festival of Life. And I went there and I saw the wife of my former general overseer, and she said to me, oh, by the way, did you ever find the money that was lost? I said, no, that we didn't get the money. We didn't find the money. She said, So she said, you're a big boy, but what can I do? But let me just give you something. So she gave me 150 pounds. So I said, okay. She said, thank you, and Then I had preached for this pastor because he wasn't there. So on a Monday, the following week, he came looking for me in the house I was staying. Mm-hmm. And he said, oh, Pastor T, thank you for preaching for me, that people enjoyed it. He said, but I'm sorry I wasn't there. But please, this is a token from the church for you, And he gave me 300 pounds, if I'm not mistaken, as an honorarium. So, and that was 450 pounds. The 150, and then the 300 pounds. That was our bought ticket of 350 pounds.
Wow.
So I had 100 pounds. When I came to America with the mindset that I was coming here to live finally, I had 100 pounds on me.
Wow.
So came back here, started. Now, at this point, I knew God wanted me to start a church at this point, So I went to the General Overseer, of the denomination then. And I said to him, "Oh, sir, God has spoken to me and this, he wanted me to start a church." And he said, "Oh, that would be good, So one day, Pastor Gandhi, who is the KBC now, called me and he said to me, "Oh, Tola, I think it would be nice for you to start a church in Baltimore." I'd never been to Baltimore. I didn't know Baltimore. The church was in Silver Spring, where I was helping out, assisting Pastor Gandhi then. When we got here, we used to live in DC. From DC, we now came to Silver Spring. That's a whole story on its own, but I don't want, maybe I should just leave all that one, So eventually, he said to me, Baltimore. I said, no problems, So when I knew we were coming to Baltimore, the issue now is, how do we start the church? At that time, the church in Silver Spring was about 2 years old. They too, they were struggling, But in the midst of their struggle, I remember Pastor Gandhi said to me, excuse me, no, our pastor in Nigeria, Pastor Tony, had come in and he said, "Oh, Tola, we don't really know what you want to do. We are not sure if God has called you to pastor or to preach or whatever." He said, "But what we'll try and do is that let's try and see if we can set you up to start a church. And for 3 months, if we support it for 3 months, if nothing happens, then that's it." And everybody moved their way. I said, okay. So this church was started on an experiment of 3 months. We're 28 now, years now. So the church in DC, of course, they didn't have money. They didn't have resources or anything. But the pastor said, okay, we'll support you every month, So they give us allowance every month for 3 months. So when it came to buying the instruments, when we started, I had not lived in America for too long, so I didn't have credit like that. But we went to Washington Music in Wheaton, and they signed a credit for me for $5,000. So I used the credit to buy instruments. And that's how we came, to Baltimore. And the church started. Now, from the day the church started, I knew God was into this. I knew what God was in it. And the challenge for me was, what message are you giving me, God, to preach? And God said to me, use your life story and use how I've brought you this far to encourage people also to know that if they trust me, I can take them to levels they would never, they'd never thought of.
Well, that brings us to the end of this episode. A huge thank you to Pastor Tola for sharing such powerful and personal stories with us. Stay tuned every Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time as we dive into further chapters of his story. Thank you.